have, in fact, kept close tabs on those who we believe have left and those who've come back. A number have been arrested or investigated, and we have systems in place to track these individuals, but you can't know everything.
Troubling words from Homeland Security Secretary Jeh Johnson on 60 Minutes last night as we welcome you to America's Forum on this Monday morning. Hope everybody had a great holiday weekend. I'm Rick Blackwell in for J.D. Hayworth.
And I'm Miranda Kahn. Great to have you with us. Secretary Johnson went on to say that inability to watch every person is something that keeps him up at night.
Yeah, interesting segment last night. Now, for more on the story, let's turn to former INS agent Michael Cutler, who is Skyping in this morning. We're also joined by former Congressman Michael Patrick Flanagan, who is coming to us from Newsmax, Washington. Will be with us for the next hour. Good morning to you both, and thanks for being here on America's Forum.
Thank you for having me.
Great. Michael, the secretary very candid in his remarks. And it's this lone wolf theory, the kid living in his parents' basement. How much of this is a concern? And what can law enforcement do? What can Homeland Security do to make sure that, kids don't want to join ISIS for whatever reason?
Well, certainly that's a problem. We have disaffected kids that are perhaps sociopathic and are looking for legitimization for violence. Certainly there's no shortage of possible Americans out there. But if you look at all the terrorist attacks that have thus far been carried out inside the United States, with the exception of Timothy McVeigh that everybody talks about, whether it was the attack at the CIA in '93 or the first attack at the Trade Center in '93, 9/11, the headline today, these were all foreign nationals who managed one way or another to gain entry into the United States, embed themselves, that is to say, hide in plain sight, and then go about their deadly preparations. It's all well and good that Secretary Johnson says that he's keeping an eye on 40 people, whatever the number is. We don't know who's coming across the borders without inspection. We also don't know the identities of those who are coming here with visas, or especially under the visa waiver program. A big issue when you look at the Europeans that are now having a serious problem, and we keep expanding that number of countries to 38 now. So we don't know what they're planning if, in fact, tomorrow morning they're going to go ahead and carry out attack. That's what a sleeper agent is, someone who keeps a low profile until the day they're called into action. We've got a big problem, and the idea of having millions of foreign nationals from every country on the planet present in our country without knowing who they are, what they're really up to, keeps me awake at night also. And, I provided testimony to the 9/11 Commission.
The problem is even more compounded by this administration, which in many ways wants to do what they think is the right thing, and that's close Guantanamo, treat everyone in a civil or local criminal court, and can't bring themselves to make the words Islamic Jihad or radical Islam. And so they really treat this as some sort of domestic crime rather than the international terror that it is, which compounds the ability to search and seize and seek and take the actions that the previous administration was able to take to keep us safe. Mr. Johnson sounds like he's trying to do some of the stuff that they've done before, but that does not jibe exactly with how the administration is approaching this officially. Is that your impression as well?
Yeah, I will tell you, one of the starting points, and I've given politicians on both sides of the aisle heart failure. I've done a bunch of congressional hearings. I think we're up to 16 in both the House and Senate on these issues. And here's a very simple premise. Why are we not using the 9/11 Commission report and findings for the starting point of any discussion about reforming immigration? Right now, the administration is giving hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of illegal aliens identity documents without a face-to-face interview, without a field investigation. Everybody got so excited about all these people that whether we're talking about the guy that stole the secrets, Snowden, or the Navy Yard shooter, how do they do the background investigation? Fair point. But what about people that simply write their name on an application, submit fingerprints, claim to be quote-unquote undocumented, which means they have no official identity documents, and then we go ahead within 48 hours and issue them a document that immediately enables them to get driver's licenses, social security cards, and on top of that, compounding the problem, we now have police departments, incredibly, around the United States, willing to hire cops who are not citizens. In some cases, according to a USA News report, and I wrote about it for both Californians Population Stabilization, capsweb.org, and I wrote about it for Front Page Magazine. They're talking about giving aliens who had been here illegally badges and guns that enable them to take their firearms across the country. What could possibly go wrong with that program?
All right, when we return, more with Michael Cutler, including details of a controversial new program just being unveiled by the Obama administration. So don't go away. Stick around. You're watching America's Forum right here on Newsmax.
The Daily Caller published an article on Friday afternoon saying the Obama administration is quietly rolling out a new program that will bring the families of legal immigrants from Central America here to the United States. As we welcome you back to America's Forum, I'm Rick Blackwell in for J.D. Hayworth today.
And I'm Miranda Kahn. This program is being unveiled at the same time the state of California is being inundated with applications for driver's licenses from undocumented immigrants in a program which became available only 3 months ago.
Yeah, meanwhile, DHS has renewed a controversial plan that would allow immigration officials searching for fugitive illegal immigrants to have access to a national license plate tracking system. Let's continue the conversation now with former INS agent Michael Cutler and former Congressman Michael Patrick Flanagan. Thanks again to the Michaels for staying with us here on America's Forum. A lot to get to. Michael, let's first talk about this license tracking program. How does it work? Tell us why it's so effective.
Well, it's effective if you know who the owner of the vehicle is. So they're able to determine what vehicles are moving through the city, at what places in the city. It would certainly help with surveillance. You know, as an agent, I engaged in quite a few surveillances. So this is a great tool for surveillance. The problem is if somebody borrows someone else's vehicle or steals a car or whatever, you know, it's kind of like that old cartoon in Mad Magazine, Spy versus Spy. Whatever we come up with, the bad guys come up with a way of defeating it. But again, this comes back to this idea about losing our privacy in the name of national security. But the bigger issue is, why aren't we doing the things that we should be doing to make certain that we don't allow terrorists into the United States in the first place? And you talked about this family reunification program. I've seen some documents that make it appear, and I believe I'm correct on this, that aliens who are given lawful status under the DACA program, the Deferred Action Childhood Arrival, and they could be up to age 31, some childhood, but they're here illegally. There's nothing that really happened to change their status except Mr. Obama's magic pen. And if you're here in violation of law, and now we're bringing your family to you, we've become involved in human trafficking, in a manner of speaking. Maybe this is their way of competing with the smuggling operations, but we have a robust legal system that lacks integrity. We admit over 1 million lawful immigrants every year. And these folks have green cards, they're on the path to citizenship. You can't run both a legal and illegal system simultaneously, parallel, because why in the world would anybody bother with the legal system when the government sanctions illegal activity?
You've got a point, Michael, and I tell you, I think we might have reached a societal tipping point with this program, and I've received more phone calls and more emails over the last 2 days or so over this than all the other immigration issues combined. I mean, Americans are generally pretty generous about what they have and sharing it with others, including where they live, and having people come here and join us and become Americans. But this seems to go over the mark. This is beyond the pale of actually spending the money to bring them in, because we don't want them to come here on their own and possibly have some difficulty getting it done, particularly as you've observed that these are people who are newly legal, minted by executive fiat as opposed to congressional action, something done in the name and the will of the people.
You're right, Congressman. And, you know, here's the other deal. They're also saying that these kids will be placed on a pathway for lawful immigrant status themselves. Well, if they do that, when they turn 21, presuming they naturalize, they will now be able to bring their parents in legally, should the future administration try to roll back this outrageous program that the president has done with his magic pen. So what we're doing is we're making a mockery of our own immigration laws. And, you know, first impressions are very important. The first impression people around the world have of the United States is usually provided by our immigration laws and the way we deal with them. We now have the world convinced that in America, law violations are not just tolerated, but rewarded. I think that's a wrong message. And again, it jams up a system that actually is our first and last line of defense against transnational criminals and international terrorists.
So what can Congress do about this?
Well, I guess the congressman is in a better position to answer that, but I'd like to see them grow a spine. I have to tell you, I'm so disappointed in the Republican Party because they went after Mr. Obama saying, well, what he's doing is violating the Constitution and the rule of law. And I agree, certainly is. But why not talk about the damage it's doing to national security? See, I believe there are too many Republicans that are happy to see what's happening happen, so it's a twofer. They get to criticize the administration, but meanwhile, the folks that want that massive influx of illegal aliens are getting what they want.
Well, so
politicians are always pulled in two places, so that's my concern here.
So let me pose that question then to you, Michael Flanagan. What are members doing right now to combat this?
Mr. Cutler's observations are absolutely correct. There's nothing wrong with what he says. There's a handshake deal across the aisle about how we have to have immigration to this country. I think for a long time we had decided that we're going to draw the line and have a robust legal immigration process involving interviews and certain qualifications of people to come into this country. And we've decided that that's just too hard. We're not going to bother with that anymore, and just come one, come all, anyone who wants to come in. And because it's politically difficult to argue with that because of groups that are set up to deal with it, Congress can work harder, should work harder, and should work with the courts because the administration has proven it doesn't want to get this done.